During 1991, civilian divers made an extraordinary discovery that defied logic. Their exploration revealed a German submarine positioned in waters where such vessels had never been known to operate. Over subsequent years, their findings led to groundbreaking revelations that challenged historical records while raising disturbing queries. Upon gaining entry to the vessel, the salvage team encountered evidence that would render observers mute with astonishment. This remarkable account chronicles the tale of U-869, beginning with an enigma submerged beneath the ocean's surface. But what made this discovery truly unsettling wasn't just its location, it was the unanswered questions it raised. How could a submarine vanish without a trace, only to reappear decades later? The ghost sub of World War II. In the churning depths of the Atlantic Ocean during World War II, death moved in silence, striking without notice or compassion. German U-boats silently stalked their targets like sharks, taking advantage of the water to submerge and subsequently torpedo Allied merchant ships. These underwater vehicles were an integral part of Hitler's strategy for terror at sea. They cut vital supply routes in the North Atlantic and destroyed everything in their path. Out of the many U-boats launched by Nazi Germany during the conflict, nearly all were sunk. Some were captured by the Allies, while others simply vanished. U-869 would be known as one of the gravest mysteries of the war. Launched in 1943, U-869 was the height of German naval innovation as one of the Type 9 C-40 U-boats and among the largest long-range submarines built to be part of the Marine Division. It was approximately 250 feet, 76 meters, with 6 torpedo tubes that were supposed to cross the Atlantic and ambush Allied ships in what were thought to be safe waters. Its mission was simple: to disrupt, destroy, and evade. Under the command of Captain Helmut Neuerberg, a battle-hardened naval officer, U-869 set off on its first combat patrol in late 1944 as Germany's war effort was collapsing. According to wartime records, the submarine was first sent off with the directive of navigating to the Gibraltar area, a pool from which Allied vessels entered the Mediterranean theater, with itself being that singular choke point. By this time, however, disorder had broken out in earnest over the German command structure that presented itself as broken communication, conflicting directives, and a rapidly deteriorating chain of command. Historical analysis suggests that U-869's operational objectives may have undergone modification during transit. On February 11, 1945, a United States destroyer and Coast Guard cutter reported engaging and sinking an unidentified German U-boat in the vicinity of Gibraltar. Military authorities subsequently documented this engagement as a confirmed kill. Allied forces arrived at the conclusion, based on time calculations and the predicted movement of U-boats, that the submarine sunk that day was U-869. With the enemy's naval assets in disarray, there was no evidence to contradict the assertion, and this became the accepted version of events. U-869 was lost off Gibraltar with the entire crew of 56 sailors presumed dead, lost at sea. No one escaped, no emergency signals were received, and nothing was discovered. For years, this was accepted without question. It was just another entry in World War II's near-endless list of ships lost at sea, merely another enemy submarine that never returned. But under scrutiny, questions began to arise. Not a definitive photo or sonar image of the wreck of U-869's specifications was found anywhere near Gibraltar. Reports from the war were inherently suspect, often grounded in visual confirmations under hectic war conditions or coercion assessments. The Atlantic's enormous waters, paired with rudimentary equipment and typical errors, only muddied proper recordation. Not only was there no extant German record of this time specifying U-869's final position, but at this late date, 1945, Germany's military infrastructure was disintegrating. Radio transmissions had stopped, records were missing or destroyed, and the few extant logs included confusing entries. Some experts suggest that U-869 never actually sailed up the Strait of Gibraltar at all. There was another disturbing aspect: the radio silence. German U-boats were commanded to keep standard contact during operations to verify progress and receive new instructions. U-869's final transmission was from the North Atlantic, thousands of miles from its purported place of rest. After this time, nothing was heard except silence. Silence so total it was as if the sea itself had taken the ship whole. The deeper researchers and historians went, the more questions mounted. Was the submarine misinterpreted at the Battle of Gibraltar? Was it diverted without anybody's knowledge? Or was something more extraordinary involved? For over 4 decades, U-869 was left an unanswered puzzle. A ghost ship lost in time, hidden beneath contradictory reports and dying memories. The crew's families had no grave to weep over, no wreckage to bemoan, only a name etched on a monument and a war file whose data failed to correspond. Even among experts, there was no consensus. Military historians pointed to the attack at Gibraltar and closed the book. Yet divers, wreck hunters, and lay investigators doubted the account. Years later, sonar contact off the coast of New Jersey hinted at something odd. Salvage divers sped in to explore, and what they'd find would be astounding. But if U-869 wasn't lost at Gibraltar, then where did it vanish? Decades later, an astonishing discovery off New Jersey's coast would challenge history itself. Could this forgotten wreck finally reveal the truth? The Jersey Mystery. Off the coast of New Jersey in the North Atlantic, there is a giant underwater cemetery where hundreds of ships lie at the bottom of the ocean. There have been hundreds of ships wrecked throughout centuries by storms, collisions, and war. Local divers treat this location as their playground, as well as a fascinating mystery. In the summer of 1991, some high-tech wreck divers stumbled upon something strange beyond what they had ever known. John Chatterton, Richie Kohler, and their team of seasoned northeastern divers were then conducting a careful search of obscure wrecks using cutting-edge side-scan sonar equipment. The seafloor inshore was very dangerous, with powerful currents, miserably poor visibility, and deep dives involved. These were not weekend plunges. Rather, they were technical dive projects involving high-risk penetration that depended on precise planning, precision, and nerves of steel. 60 miles out of Point Pleasant, New Jersey, and 230 feet beneath the surface, their sonar device detected an odd image. The object was long and slender, torpedo-shaped on the bottom of the sea. Obviously man-made and obviously ancient, its origin is unknown. The curiosity started to turn into an obsession. The visibility was atrocious when the divers first made out the wreck, little more than a few feet away. The cold penetrated their suits relentlessly. The building stood half buried in sand and tangled in decades of fishing net. In repeated visits to the site, the obvious came into view. This was a sub, and one of considerable size, and it wasn't where it was meant to be. At first, there was no hull number or lettering to be seen by the divers, no nameplate, plaque, or flags, nothing at all to show that this was what boat. The tower was severely damaged, with its conning tower on the deck and a cracked outer shell, sinking slowly into oblivion. Where did it come from? American, Russian, or German? Nobody had a clue. And that's when the divers dubbed it with a nickname, Yoo-Hoo. Yoo-Hoo was an enigma that did not make sense. No World War II submarine was ever known to be lost anywhere close to this place within 100 miles. But here, it stayed quietly at the bottom of the ocean for almost half a century. The dive team had a series of comeback operations. These were not sprint dives. They involved special gas mixtures, mandatory decompression stops, and careful planning. The danger was extreme. Divers might experience nitrogen narcosis, oxygen toxicity, or worse, decompression sickness. But with each dive came new information. On the wreck, they had German instruments calibrated in metric units, pipes and valves, and control equipment. It was certainly a German U-boat. But which one? They came back with tiny objects, plates, bowls, and pieces of equipment. Some wore the Marine Eagle insignia, but nothing conclusive. The breakthrough came when they found a butter knife, twisted but still in one piece, bearing the name Hornberg engraved on it. Not a model's name, but a man's. This new information turned things around. With naval documents and crew manifests, the divers followed the name to an actual person. Georg Hornberg was on U-869, the crew manifest reported. The divers persisted in their hunt underwater, and in the records, they discovered valve manifolds and diesel engine components with serial numbers on a dive after that. The numbers led back to shipyard documents with Diesemog AG Wieser, the German builder of U-869, and the same firm. The components fit together like a jigsaw. They had done it. Against all odds, these amateur divers had discovered the mystery wreck. 6 years later, in 1997, the United States Navy formally confirmed that the submarine wreck lying off New Jersey was, in fact, U-869. The significance was staggering. U-869 had not perished off Gibraltar, as U.S. military records had continued to argue ever since 1945. It had passed away off the American East Coast, a full 3,000 meters removed from where history had located it. The divers had done what no war record ever had. They had found and recognized the wreck by taking a physical glance. They had uncovered the truth, and then the shiver of horror. Nobody was looking for U-869 here. Without a group of dedicated divers, it would still rust anonymously, never sharing its tale. The U.S. Navy and historians were interested. Wreck divers everywhere welcomed it as one of history's finest identifications ever made in the teeth of institutional apathy. No government, no military, just a bunch of recreational divers, stubbornness, and hundreds of fatal hours on the seafloor. But the mystery was still not unraveled. The largest question still remained. How did U-869 end up where it rested? Its mission orders said otherwise, Gibraltar claimed. Wartime cables had directed it to Europe. So how did it end up on the wrong side of the Atlantic? Had it been diverted, received new secret instructions, or was there some communication breakdown that led it astray? No records indicated this was so. The marine journals were incomplete, and the crew of U-869 had been killed with the submarine. A gravesite had been found. While history had seemingly been restored, the real mystery of U-869 was only just coming. Death by friendly fire or something worse. While salvage divers established that the German submarine U-869 lay beyond question off New Jersey, another mystery was created. The seemingly simple question of why it sank grew increasingly complex as divers explored the wreck and researchers re-examined the record. The reality grew increasingly elusive as each day passed, even as evidence piled up. Two competing theories were born, each supported by much evidence but mired in huge holes that left the sheer truth tantalizingly beyond grasp. The two most common theories remain debated today. The first theory suggests U-869 was sunk by its own guns. The second theory suggests destruction by American warships. Let's examine the first hypothesis. World War II, German torpedoes were of unimaginable power, but of numerous flaws. Among their scariest misses was the circle runner phenomenon. By either a malfunctioning gyroscope or a broken control surface, a torpedo intended to follow a straight course would veer off track, creating a huge arc which would ultimately propel it back in the direction of its own submarine. This self-destruction was no theory. It happened again and again during the war, and it was personally known to every German submarine commander. Those who support the circle runner theory are certain that this is what destroyed U-869. Their explanation hinges on the fact that after firing a torpedo, whether in combat or during a test simulation, the round strayed off course and curved around. Before the crew could react, it struck the submarine with devastating impact. The circumstantial evidence supports this theory. First, there was no indication U-869 ever made any attacks on enemy vessels. No reports of hits, no survivor accounts of shots fired. Second, the wreck evidenced massive internal blast damage consistent with a torpedo explosion having occurred within or against the hull, but not from an external explosion. While compelling, the theory is still incomplete. Another version asserts that U-869 was destroyed by the U.S. Navy with two ships, USS Howard D. Crowe and USS Coiner. According to this, on the 11th of February 1945, the two ships intercepted a submarine in the area, and they returned with a coordinated depth charge attack. After the war, this attack was credited with successfully sinking a German submarine of undetermined type, later believed to be U-869. U.S. Navy official histories maintain this as the submariner's final destiny, even after the wreck was found off New Jersey. At first glance, this answer is easy enough, but it raises some tough questions. First, timing was an issue. U-869 shouldn't have been seen off the East Coast, since its mission instructions had Gibraltar marked as its target. If the Navy vessels were to attack a submarine there, why didn't anyone make the connection to U-869 earlier? Second, the location of the wreck itself had inconsistencies. Although the location of the wreck of U-8699 is near the coordinates presented by USS Howard D. Crowe and USS Coiner, they are not precisely the same. The proximity is suspicious while casting suspicion. Third, sonar inspections and damage reports revealed peculiar facts. Divers who explored the wreck realized that several torpedo tubes remained sealed. Had U-869 been involved in a battle, why hadn't it fired anything? Why did it appear so taken aback? The more divers ventured into the wrecked ship, the more evidence offered a bewildering picture. The front section reported severe damage, forced inward and creased. Compartments inside had been knocked out, suggesting a shock wave from within rather than from near-depth charges. Simultaneously, some of the sections of the outer hull showed patterns of deformation in accordance with pressure waves from depth charges, though less severe than would be generated by an actual strike. One of the observations was particularly noteworthy. The control room and the torpedo room were comparatively untouched. The damage, while serious, appeared to be compartmentalized, suggesting an internal blast confined to the ship, possibly a torpedo exploding on or shortly after launch. Adding to the chaos were the locations of the crew inside the vessel. Skeletons scattered everywhere meant that all were kept from reaching the hatchways. No effort at surfacing, no traces of emergency ascent. The attack occurred at awful speed and ferocity, affording no time for the crew to respond. The mystery was heightened by wartime inconsistencies in military records. U-869 was believed for decades to be well away from the U.S. coast, and the submarine allegedly sunk by the guns of American destroyers was never definitively established. This makes for two-way misidentification. Perhaps the USS Howard Drow and USS Coiner did fire a torpedo at a German sub, but not U-869. Perhaps U-869 was already dead days earlier, having been killed by a faulty torpedo. Or perhaps both assumptions are completely wrong. There was another hypothesis that U-869 had been on a covert mission with source orders never properly documented. That would explain its solo and silent radio. It might also be the reason for the secrecy surrounding its discovery, even years down the road after the wreck was found. With more and more evidence, conclusive answers remained elusive. Both theories accounted for the available facts but were based on serious flaws. U-869's fate was a cold case. One aspect bothered the divers particularly: the shut torpedo tubes. If the submarine had put up a fight, why hadn't it fired? If it had been ambushed by a circle runner, where was the launching record? And if it were ambushed, how did it get pinned with unarmed weapons? The reason why U-869 was sunk without a single shot being fired adds to the tragedy of the story. Having traveled thousands of miles under cover, it died in silence, unable to return fire. This adds credence to a final chilling thought: what was it doing off the coast of America in the first place? That question that no one had been able to answer would finally receive its first hint in the most unlikely way. Because just as detectives were sure the case could not possibly go any deeper, they opened a sealed compartment. But inside this steel grave, secrets still lingered. The sealed compartment held more than rust and wreckage. It held answers. Could what they were about to uncover rewrite everything we knew? The hidden chambers. For many years, deep-sea divers had made the journey to the depths to examine the wreck of U-869, putting their lives on the line against turbulent currents, poor visibility, or pressure. However, in 2024, the divers were able to make strides by utilizing declining diving technology. In conjunction with advanced planning, we will dive into aspects of the submarine that the previous divers were not able to access. When exploring the wreck, they were able to uncover a well-preserved time capsule in a secured compartment. Archaeologists were able to retrieve separate lockers, sealed storage containers, and footlockers, some of the rubber seals still intact. Also, the divers discovered items usually associated with life aboard a World War II German submarine: ration cans, logbooks, and clothing items. The discovery was immediately of interest to historians and intelligence experts. In the sealed compartment, investigators found several astonishing artifacts. A ceremonial naval officer's dagger with beautifully engraved patterns on the blade that included elite unit slogans. An immaculately preserved Marine dress uniform bearing the Iron Eagle emblem and red armband. A collection of Nazi trinkets, including a neatly folded swastika flag. Propaganda reports in English aimed at causing disunity among the American people. An encrypted codebook bearing markings of the ABV. the military intelligence branch of Nazi Germany. The implications of these findings were so significant and politically sensitive that they were kept secret. The findings indicated that U-869's mission could have been beyond the normal patrol responsibilities, possibly including clandestine operations in America. Such disclosures might drastically change our comprehension of German activities in the Western Hemisphere during World War II. What are your thoughts on this? Feel free to share them with us in the comment section. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.